So Tim, just as I asked you earlier before we press record, just give me a rundown of the situation of what happened with your team's season ending here unexpectedly.
Unexpectedly and unfortunately, you'd much rather it end on the ice against competition. But we had a positive exposure, and so with that, with the tight quarters of the locker room and the bench, and just the nature of the beast of our game, we got to quarantine, and it's as simple as that. And as hard as that is to say it's that simple, it basically is that simple, that we had the exposure, and for everybody's well-being, we have to quarantine. I don't like it. I'm not happy with it, but that's the rules that we live with, and that's what we have to do.
When your team finds out about this, or you have to tell them, I'm sure they've been fighting all season and following the protocols to play any games. And when a season ends like this, tell us, what was it like telling your team this, and how did they react to the news?
It's hard, and it's funny because our first game of the season was canceled and rescheduled because of a positive COVID exposure and test. But obviously in November, late November, I forget the date we started, but there was 2 months ahead of us. We had time, and the schedulers at Mid-States were awesome, and they got us the ice, and they got us back on the ice after our quarantine. But when you're at the end of the season and there's limited ice and limited time, when the first round has to be over, and then when quarters have to start, and then the schedule's set for semis, and you just can't produce more days. You can't compress a 14-day quarantine into 7 or 8 or 9 days. It's unfortunate. I hate it, but it's just the way it is,
So what do you take away from this season, or what lessons did you try to get across to your kids, and especially after the way it ended? I'm talking to some basketball players and football players in Illinois, and they didn't get to play in the fall, and they had this condensed season. I guess in a way it's good to be able to play at all, but what did you draw from this season, and what type of lessons do you try to teach your kids battling through this really weird COVID year?
We got on the ice. I was reluctant, but we got on the ice in September, late September, early October, like we normally would. And I told them from the beginning, I didn't know what this season had for us in store. I said, I didn't know if we'd ever play a game. I said, by December or January, you're probably going to get so sick of listening to me in practice, you're going to throw up. But it just, they got it together. They got us some games, and that was exciting in itself, just to actually get some competition. But after about the second or third week of practice, I realized, a lot of the kids were still homeschooled. They were still at home. They weren't in classroom yet. And man, come practice time, they were like caged animals. They had more energy than I'd ever seen them have. They show up at practice, they're not tired, they're ready to go. You sit down, you talk to them, you try to talk to them. There's like, coach, just can we move on? We don't want to talk, And it was neat, and it was refreshing, but it was sad in itself that it was what it was, And so the lesson is that, just like any other year, I told them I didn't know how long it would last, and it's more probably directed towards the seniors, because it's awful for them, because this is it. They didn't get the final game was a win, which was good, and it was a good win, and it was really a good game. So that in itself is a victory, because we had so many ups and downs over the season. But you get through this year, no matter what level you're at, and sports-wise, it's a huge deal. You can have your own little championship, just the fact that you got on the ice and you got to have some competition with your peers and your line mates and your buddies. And it's sad, but I feel awful for the seniors. I really do. And as soon as we get out of quarantine, we have few practice hours left, and we're going to go have some fun and hopefully end on a good note there. But yeah, it's a bummer for sure.